Welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of a comparison in 2021, comparing the iPhone 8 Plus and the iPhone XS Max. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these devices, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, side by side, I mean, you can definitely tell the XS Max and the iPhone 8 Plus are actually the same exact size for the most part, but you can tell there's quite a bit of difference. The XS Max does look overall better. It has a way bigger display, but in the same form factor pretty much as the iPhone 8 Plus, which is pretty impressive. And these two phones are only 1 year apart from each other. And that's actually something that not a lot of people remember. The 8 Plus to the XS Max is a massive jump. Same thing with the 8 Plus to the 10. But this is a pretty big difference in my opinion. Now, starting off at the front, the iPhone 8 Plus has that 5.5 inch, almost at 8.8 inch, 5.5 inch IPS panel, and it's a pretty decent panel. You have True Tone on it. The only downside is the bezels. You know, it does have a pretty thick amount of bezels around it with that home button. Is it a big deal? It's totally up to you. I mean, for me, it's kind of 50-50. I'm glad the 8 Plus can be jailbroken. I like the gesture-based design more than I like the lack of bezels in my opinion. So that's one reason why I like the XS Max. Now on the XS Max, you do have that 6.5 inch OLED panel. Now this is a beautiful panel. I love it a lot. It looks so good. I mean, it looks so clean. You guys already know how this panel is. And I mean, there's no words that can describe it. You know, it's still an amazing panel. There's some things about this phone I'm not super happy with, but the panel is one of those things that I cannot knock it. It looks extremely good. And even, you know, 3 years later almost, this phone came out in 2018, this one 2017, it's still a very good looking panel for sure, and much better looking in my opinion than the iPhone 8 Plus. In terms of thinness and thickness, I think the XS Max is a little bit thicker than the iPhone 8 Plus. On the back glass backs on both, I do have a skin on my XS Max. The iPhone 8 Plus and the iPhone XS Max both have dual camera setups, and they're essentially the same thing, but we'll get into that in a second. Wireless charging on both, IP certification on both, and that essentially covers it. That's actually pretty much the main difference between these two phones. Now, there's another massive difference internally that, you know, I'm not 100% too sure what's going to happen, but the iPhone 8 Plus has a year older chipset than the iPhone XS Max. But I'm truly one of those believers that I just have a feeling that, you know, the iPhone XS Max and the iPhone 8 Plus are probably going to be ending off around the same time. Not exactly the same time, but I feel like maybe the XS Max and the iPhone 8 Plus will pull an iPhone 6 and iPhone 5S type of thing going, because there's a lot of similarities. The speeds aren't that really that crazy, but also the chipsets inside are more similar than not. The A11 and the A12, there's a lot of similarities here. So take it as you will, but that's one thing that I feel like is going to end up happening between these two phones. I can't predict the future, but I feel like that's end up going to happen. But another thing is the battery sizes and battery lives between them. I'm actually pretty shocked to say that both of these phones have somewhat around the same size battery life. The iPhone XS Max has a bigger sized battery, but the iPhone 8 Plus does a really good job with the battery that it has inside of it, even though it's fairly small. Battery life was not the strong suits of either one of these things in my opinion, and none of these phones are going to be known as the best iPhone battery, but I feel like these two are more similar than not, so that's kind of another important thing to keep in mind. But take it as you will, but that's kind of how I kind of sum up the battery and the software longevity between these two phones. Now let's go and do a speed comparison between these two devices. The iPhone XS Max has that Apple A12 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 GB of RAM. The iPhone 8 Plus has that Apple A11 Bionic chip inside of it with 3 gigs of RAM. So let's go and see which one is the faster one between both of these. Okay, now that we're back, all the apps are clear on the background as you guys can see. Let's get into it. Let's do phone calls, 3, 2, 1. And you can see both were roughly around the same. Let's do the app stores, 3, 2, 1. And I think the iPhone 8 Plus may have actually been faster there. Scrolling through, you guys can see roughly around the same thing, but that was actually, I think, faster on the iPhone 8 Plus. Camera, 3, 2, 1. And we'll wait until we see squares in the middle. Roughly around the same, to be honest. Let's go and get into these third-party apps that we always have to get into. And I don't know where the iPhone 8 Pluses are. Okay, I guess this is it. Let's go and do Temple Run 2. 3, 2, 1. And again, I don't know why the iPhone XS Max crashes here. I mean, this is most up-to-date version for the most part, and we're still getting crashes on the XS Max, which is very strange. It happened last time too, so I'm not 100% too sure why that happens. Let's go and do BOFA, 3, 2, 1. I don't know if this one's going to crash too. And 8 Plus faster, XS Max a little bit behind, surprisingly. Dropbox, 3, 2, 1. XS Max was faster there. Quizlet, 3, 2. Let's do Netflix, 3, 2, 1. I think the iPhone 8 Plus may have been a little bit faster there. Thank you, 3, 2, 1. and I think the iPhone XS Max was faster. iPhone 8 Plus just a little bit behind. Not an insane difference, but that was a noticeable one for sure. Snake versus blocks, 3, 2, 1. Let's see if it crashes here. Hopefully it doesn't. And XS Max is faster. iPhone 8 Plus just a little bit behind. Getting into some gameplay. Let's see what's going on here. And I think as usual, there's not a really big difference in the gameplay version, but the gameplay with the game to open was faster on the XS Max for sure on that one. Stack, 3, 2, 1. And crashes again on the XS Max. 8 Plus was able to keep that open. So again, I don't know why that happens, but I guess we'll look into it further. Let's go ahead and do something like Snapchat, 3, 2, 1. And I guess that app isn't available there. Let's do the original Temple Run 3, 2, 1. Let's see if it crashes on the XS Max. And it does. I'm not too sure why that happens. If anybody has any reason why that is being the case, then I'd love to know. We can do some stock apps. Let's do Clock, 3, 2, 1. I think faster on the XS Max. Photos, 3, 2, 1. Roughly around the same thing. Not really that big of a difference. News, 3, 2, 1. And I think the XS Max was faster there, but again, the iPhone 8 Plus was on a different pop-up, and that essentially covers it. I think ultimately the iPhone 8 Plus is slower a little bit than the XS Max, but the XS Max has a weird glitch where it just keeps crashing those apps. So I don't know why that happens. I guess we'll look into it further, but that essentially covers up the speed comparison. Now let's go and hit on the cameras. And I was going to spend like 90 minutes talking about them, but they're essentially almost the same thing. The XS Max has that dual camera setup, 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, and the iPhone 8 Plus essentially has that same thing, 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto. Both can do 4K at 60 on the back, which I'm really happy about. The bigger difference is on the front cameras though. The iPhone 8 Plus and the iPhone XS Max can only do 1080p, but the iPhone XS Max can do 1080p at 60, where the 8 Plus can only do 1080p at 30. So that's a minor difference between these two, and I think that's the major difference between these two in terms of a camera standpoint. They're both going to be getting you roughly around the same type of camera layout as far as I've known, as far as I've seen in my life, but I'll probably give the edge to the XS Max for being the newer camera and all that stuff. So at this point, to kind of sum up the video and to answer the question, should you go and buy an iPhone XS Max or should you go and buy an iPhone 8 Plus in 2021? Well, this is essentially what I'll tell you. I think for sure the iPhone 8 Plus is a very good phone still. I think it has a lot going for it. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's good enough for a majority of people. It has a very good build quality. It feels extremely premium. It still looks pretty decent. It doesn't look extremely outdated. Of course, it has big bezels, but it doesn't look ugly. I still think it looks pretty good. You have a beautiful display for the most part. Definitely not amazing, but it's a pretty good panel. A lightning port on the bottom, Touch ID, very good build quality, glass on the back, wireless charging, very good camera still, and the performance is still pretty good. You saw how it compared to against the XS Max, and this performance was really not that bad. It's still a pretty decent performing phone. However, the XS Max is definitely the better phone, and the phone that I would rather have, in my opinion. I would rather have a XS Max than an iPhone 8 Plus any day. This device is, just future-proofed in so many different ways. It has a beautiful display. It's a little bit thicker, and it does feel a little bit heavier, but it's really not that bad. It definitely feels more top heavy from what I've seen, but it's really not that big of a deal. You have the notch with Face ID, you have very good build quality, very beautiful display, and a very massive display. So if you're playing a bunch of games, this is the phone for you in my opinion. The performance was a little bit better here and there. Really, I would not upgrade from the 8 Plus to the XS Max because of the performance. That's definitely not the area I would improve in. You're basically upgrading because of the newer chipset, more software updates, but also because of just the beautiful screen and the way it looks and all that stuff. So that's essentially it. Those are the main differences. If you can, I would highly recommend going up to the 11 Pro Max. I think that's like the best iPhone you can buy for the money, 11 Pro Max or 11 Pro, but that essentially covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.